Every year, lawmakers come together to decide what our nation's spending priorities will be for the following year. More for defense, more for education, more for renewable energy. They also decide how to raise the money to pay for these priorities. They decide who should be taxed and how much they should pay. That's why this issue of the federal budget is relevant to you and everyone you know. Not long ago, Burger King was involved in a controversy over taxes. When the US company acquired a Canadian restaurant chain, it moved its headquarters from the United States to Canada. By changing its address, the firm avoided paying more than $100 million in US corporate taxes that year. The company said it had to move because the United States government would have taxed its profits from sales in Canada, even though Canada was also taxing those profits. Should Burger King be criticized for this move? Conservatives, radicals, and liberals absolutely agree that when it comes to our nation's tax policies and spending, irresponsible budgeting and money management are a problem. They share the same goal of having financial freedom to invest in our future, but they strongly disagree on how to achieve that end. That's what all the fights are about when it comes to the federal budget. It's time to hear the voices.
So, about Burger King moving its headquarters from the US to Canada. It was the right decision under the circumstances. High US corporate tax rates make it impossible for firms to compete profitably, and this injustice forces companies to use tax avoidance strategies. When firms don't consider their bottom lines, they go out of business. Society pays the price in lost jobs and fewer products. We don't need high taxes or deficit spending to fund the federal budget. We can lower taxes and pay for our priorities simply by limiting government to its three essential roles. Those are national security, a justice system, and infrastructure, like roads and bridges. When those are the only roles of government, we cut income taxes, capital gains taxes, and corporate taxes. Now, everyone has an incentive to work, save, and invest. Eventually, this leads firms to increase production, which grows the economy. When we have a lower tax rate on a bigger national economy, we end up generating more tax revenue. In other words, free market tax cuts pay for themselves. With the right sized government and the right level of taxes, society flourishes. Radicals, you make big promises, but you can't possibly deliver results because you're against profit. That's why your integrated balanced budget is an impossible dream. No profit means no motivation to produce, so worker-owned firms don't generate any wealth. There's no way you can fund your budget by raising taxes, since there's nothing to tax. The radical idea of public banking is also deeply flawed. Public banking councils fund every pie-in-the-sky idea because they're guided by idealism, not responsible lending practices. When all those borrowers default on their loans, the government bails out the banks by printing more money. It has to, even though this leads to dangerous levels of inflation. Because if public banks fail, the whole money system comes crashing down. From beginning to end, democratic socialism is unsustainable. It leads to massive national debt, society-wide poverty, universal apathy, and zero hope for the future. And liberals, your tax and spend policies leave us in the hole to the tune of trillions of dollars. The interest we're paying on the debt you already racked up is staggering and compounds by the minute. And what do your adaptable balanced budgets actually give us? Wasteful bureaucracy and programs that demotivate people from contributing to society. You feed the beast of a big government with fair market progressive taxes. That cuts our economic growth off at its knees because it demotivates firms. Liberals also try to fund their bloated budgets by printing money. Great, now we have alarming rates of inflation. To add insult to injury, government also borrows from the public. But that money would have been loaned to private businesses if government hadn't gotten involved. So not only is our nation's money mismanaged, but firms are crowded out, making it even harder for the economy to achieve its potential. Here's what we should do to have the financial freedom to invest in our future. Use annual balanced budgets. Every year, we keep revenues exactly equal to expenditures. On the revenue side, we drastically reduce taxes. On the expenditure side, we fund only 3 necessary roles of government. That's how we starve the beast. If we must, we pass a constitutional amendment to make annual balanced budgets the law. On the monetary side, we use one of 3 options to constrain the money supply. We use a gold standard, or we let private currencies compete, or we predetermine a rate of growth. Money will finally be used only as it was intended, to facilitate transactions in the real economy. Free market capitalism brings us to the bright future we deserve. So, about Burger King moving its headquarters from the US to Canada. Those private owners had to maximize their profits by reducing their taxes. If they didn't, they would have been driven out of business by a competitor who had no compunction about ditching our country to save a buck. Capitalist competition turns privately owned corporations into stateless multinational profiteers, loyal only to their bottom lines. In democratic socialism, the federal budget is the annual renewal of our vows as a society to continue fulfilling our mutual obligations. We pay higher taxes so that together we can fund what we could never afford on our own. Things like free higher education and universal health care. People contribute their best to society when they have what they need to thrive. So every spending decision reflects our shared priority to ensure the well-being of people and the planet. The annual budget is also a vow to future generations, a promise that will protect the long-term viability of resources and leave them free of debt. Our commitment to sustainable development guarantees that we use our nation's resources to create prosperity for all. Every year, you liberals deficit spend and drive us deeper into debt, while you enable for-profit corporations to slither out of paying their fair share in taxes. And your handful of assistance programs don't even come close to meeting the needs of the poor and middle class. To add insult to injury, they and their descendants get stuck with the bill. Our problems are also not solved by the privately owned Federal Reserve, which just prints more money to keep the system of capitalism from toppling over. Growth at all costs doesn't improve our quality of life or make the planet sustainable. The national debt is just a symptom of the rot at the heart of fair market capitalism. It's exhausting to watch liberals try to prop up their system with adaptable balanced budgets. Nothing they do fixes the problem, because capitalism itself is the problem. And conservatives, your limited roles of government prevent society from creating prosperity for all. In the name of taming the beast of big government, you abandon the poor and middle class. They have no choice but to take out high-interest loans to make ends meet. They rack up unsustainable levels of personal debt. While they get poorer, the rich get richer, because conservatives cut taxes on the wealthy. They claim those tax cuts pay for themselves, but that never happens. So instead of annual balanced budgets, we have annual deficits and a national debt that grows by leaps and bounds. Don't even get me started on the plan to constrain the money supply. Handing the economy over to privately owned banks only further enriches the top 1%. Free market policies undermine society today and mortgage the future for generations to come. Here's what we should do to have the financial freedom to invest in our future. Use integrated, balanced budgets. Everyone pays appropriate levels of taxes, and we easily fund all the roles of government without racking up debt. We get state-of-the-art airports, effective disaster relief, a universal basic income, and more. Public banks manage our tax revenue and serve the public's interest. They make low-interest loans to firms and interest-free loans to the government. Public banks on the local, state, and national level also make sure the money supply aligns with the needs of society. By wisely distributing our plentiful resources, each person is able to contribute their innovations, creativity, and tax dollars to society. In democratic socialism, we can count on a bright future for all. So, About Burger King moving its headquarters from the US to Canada. Even after it moved, the company continued to do business in the US. It raked in massive profits using our infrastructure and educated workforce, but it didn't pay its fair share of taxes. We needed government to close the loopholes and enforce the rules. Unfair laws and lax enforcement enable corporations to dodge their responsibilities. We should all be grateful to have a government that works for us. It collects everyone's tax dollars and spends them on our behalf to bring us the benefits of a modern society. We fix our bridges, outfit our military, upgrade our satellites, and develop cures for diseases. We also get job training programs, consumer protection agencies, and stimulus programs that stabilize the economy. It's right that everyone contributes their fair share to fund our national priorities. That means we can accomplish our goals without racking up debt. Fair market capitalism meets the needs of society when the economy is on track, and it also strategically adjusts when something unexpected threatens to pull us off course. With the helping hand of government, the economy achieves its potential and people flourish. You conservatives breezily promise that tax cuts for the rich will grow the economy for all and ultimately pay for themselves. Ridiculous! That won't happen because you cut the government programs that let the poor and middle class thrive and contribute to society. What you're actually starving is the economy, and your tax cuts are only making the rich richer. Likewise, your annual balanced budgets don't keep us out of debt. In a crisis, government can't borrow to get the economy back on track, so revenue plummets. With your constrained money supply, recovery is impossible. Now, the country can't even pay for the limited roles of government conservatives tolerate, like national defense. So, deficit spending becomes the only option. In the end, free market policies not only make life meaner, harsher, and more brutal for the poor and middle class, but they also leave us with a mountain of debt. And radicals, there's no motivation to work hard when everything is handed to you by the government. No production means no tax revenue, so your integrated balanced budgets simply can't be funded. What happens to all those pie-in-the-sky promises of democratic socialism? The government borrows money to pay for them. Year after year, the national debt grows exponentially. And because not enough of anything is produced, the government ends up deciding who gets the food, healthcare, housing, and everything else people need to survive. This inevitably leads to totalitarianism. On top of that, radical public banking is a viper's nest of bribes, special favors, and preferential treatment. Resources go to people who have power and connections, not to investments that bring the highest returns. When we reject the profit motive and leave government in the hands of amateurs and cronies, society turns into a bankrupt free-for-all. Here's what we should do to have the financial freedom to invest in our future. Strengthen adaptable balanced budgets. We all benefit from a government that pivots and adapts to the needs of the moment. When times are tough, government deficit spends and the benefits multiply across society to get us back on track. When the economy booms, it pays back the outstanding debt. At the same time, the Federal Reserve keeps our financial house in order by pulling money out or putting money into circulation as needed. With adaptable balanced budgets and a flexible money supply, we don't have to worry when the unexpected happens. Fair market capitalism uses the helpful hand of government to create a debt-free, thriving economy, today and in the future.
You've just heard the arguments about the federal budget from 3 perspectives. They all want financial freedom to invest in our future, but they have very different ways of achieving that goal. Now, it's time for you to be part of the conversation.